welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Hi, I'm Larry.
Hi, I'm Jesi.
I'm Ari.
And I'm Josh. And today we are going to be going over a poem from a literary magazine. In particular, this is from Slice Magazine, which it used to come out twice a year, now it's only coming out once a year. The theme for this issue
Is that the guy from Moonlight?
It's art. The theme for this issue is birth. This particular poem we're going over, Grief is a Thing That Wades, by Daniella Toosie-Watson, talks about the complete opposite, where she is where she is lamenting on a moment of loss. For the discussion starter for this piece, this poem describes the speaker mourning about losing her father. Why describe this grief as being something that wades?
Well, I think I felt the poem started off very lighthearted and almost happy, and then I felt like that last line where, if only I could get my hands to take them off the shelf was almost sad and angry, and I feel like that's how grief kind of is. You have those happy memories, and then the angry, sad thoughts, and then back to the happy memories.
And then there's that fear that when you no longer have physical evidence of this individual, would these memories wade away?
Are they really gone once it's gone?
The way that the poem is written is almost as if it's wading. It starts off with the whole, you're seeing the pavement as like a wading river. You see some more concrete images about the environment in which the speaker's living, and then you transition to the fact that she's mourning the loss of her father, who his final wishes were that his ashes be spread into the particular body of water. He requested that, but she still, if only I could get my damned hands to pick him up from the shelf and let him go. So, just the way that one sees life, because to him, that would be his wish of life going on, and what she'll still have is the memories and the love and everything else that he has ever provided for her, physical, material, or emotional action.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting kind of way that it plays off with the environment and the feeling of grief, right? I think the waiting part is kind of like a slogging feeling that you feel like you may never get out of when you're in it.
Yeah.
And yet all around you is all the signs of people not affected, like neighbors are not as affected or affected at all, and even other family members seem to be, enjoying themselves, having a good time.
And life goes on. I mean, they may have their moment, but they don't share grief the same time you do.
Right, and the relationship between a daughter and a father too is very special. You only have one, and you only have one. So it's difficult. So that kind of thing is always going to be really, really hard. The closer they are to you, and the more personal that relationship. So yeah, I think the title is very good. I like the title a lot.
Speaking of the title is misleading. I don't think this poem has anything to do with grief at all, and I will make my argument pretty plain here. This poem, when I'm reading this, doesn't seem, of course the title is Grief is a Thing That Wades, so obviously grief has to be involved in it, but it's not the center point of it. You have someone who has, been through a death, in this case her father, and their father has requested that she kind of lets him go into the river or whatever the body of water it was. But coming from my mind, I don't think this poem has anything to do at all with what has already happened. I think this poem has to do with contemplating the memories that you have already experienced and moving the difficult decision to move on and continue your life. And that is why it says at the bottom here, if only I could get my damned hands to pick him up. I think it's not because she doesn't want to fulfill his wishes or anything like that. I feel it is more she is afraid that once she takes that act of dumping his ashes away, there's no going back. She's going to have to start something new. And since you just said that this issue had to do with birth, I think that this poem is put in here because it's trying to explain how you can move on in your life and start and give birth and start a whole new
I mean,
thing.
rebirth is what comes after the sense of grief,
Right.
but in the way that one has the ability to grow after a crucial loss like that.
I will give you an example. It's very personal to me, and that's my grandpa. I remember my grandpa died in 2014. Near 2014, late December, and I felt that it was very, very difficult to move on without him because like he was like a mentor to me. But like I think once I started to listen a little bit more on what my dad was saying and starting to let go of things and not going down to Ventnor every single month to try and just feel closer to him. I only do it every so often now, but like it's that kind of thing where like the rebirth is by letting go. Is that yes, you can remember this person and you can remember all the things he's helped you be, but now you're on your own. Basically go forward with the memories and the information and stuff. But it can be it's that moment of hesitation where it can be very difficult to want to move on because you are still accepting that the past is what is correct.
I would disagree. That I do think this poem is about grief. I think that it has to do with, she's talking about the environment around her. I also feel that her and her thoughts and her memories and her circumstance compared to what she is observing is details that come with grief.
And I will tell you that I did find this poem to be very interesting. It's one of the more interesting ones I've read. Probably the last interesting one I've read since 25 Stanzas, but it's interesting because you're right. It does talk about physical objects, and it kind of talks about special memories and places. But I feel that she's more afraid to let go of the past life that she has already had with these physical objects, rather than, oh no, I've lost these objects. What am I going to do?
I don't think it is that. I think it's the other way. I think that she wants to let him go now, right? She wants to let him go because she is overwhelmed with the feelings of grief, and she wants to move on from that, but she can't. And in a sense, it's because he's got his wishes for how to dispose of the urn, and I think she's associating a lot of the feelings of grief with the urn, thinking that once she gets rid of the body, she'll be able to, gets rid of the remains, she'll be able to move on.
Larry, I have a question for you.
Also on an emotional level, she's not ready to move on, even though she wants to. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, in Judaism we don't have ashes, so we don't really cremate anybody. But what is the significance of cremating? Because I actually don't know how that works.
We don't do it either.
I think it's more people do. It's a personal preference.
You can do it. Technically, you're not supposed to. But
Christians have done so, but
what is the
It's just that idea of having your ashes spread across something beautiful, like.
I was gonna say I don't think it's really anything that's religious. It's more about
how
not
what in the West. The origins in the East, like in the Hindu culture, it means something.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just more about
that Phoenician birth out of.
Well,
out of the ashes.
People say being buried and cramped underground. That's an argument that people would make on the contrary.
The bucket list at the very end when the old man is in the Folgers pot and he wants to be put on top of the mountain so he can always see how beautiful it is.
Okay.
It's just kind of a preference.
It's chock full of nuts.
Yeah, chock full of nuts. That's the coffee can.
Because I think the reason my opinion is a little bit different is because I'm coming from a different background where we don't, where it's important that right after the funeral, there's a 7-day period where that's 7 day periods, that's a pretty long time actually, where it kind of moves from being, oh, someone just died, to remembering them and then being prepared to move on. So perhaps maybe I'm kind of viewing this in that way, even though it seems like this is a decision that is being made without the 7-day period, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say I know that when people close to me have died, we don't have a 7-day kind of grace. It's like, oh, you went to the funeral, okay, come back to work, go back to normal.
We would still go to work. We would still go to work. It's at night. There's a short service every night for 7 days, except on Saturdays.
But we didn't have anything. It was just okay, somebody died, get over it, go back to normal. Not that cut and dry, but
Gotcha.
you know, there's not that time dedicated to. I know when my mom's father died, she was distraught. Like, she tried to go back to normal, but at nighttime she was by herself and set and sulking in her own thoughts. And it's like, maybe, you know, if you have that kind of release to, you know, prepare yourself to move on, you know, that could be like something that people need in a sort of way.
When Grandpop died, I remember that 5 days of the week, 2 of them we didn't do because it was the Sabbath, but 5 days of the week we had what's called a Shiva at my house, which is that 7-day thing. And we had people from all over who didn't even know us, some of them, came over to our house to kind of show their respects. And it's kind of like a time-based thing to make sure that, like, there's like that week to kind of just think about what you do. So it's hard for me not to look at this poem in that way, but I do understand all your opinions where it's definitely more about the grief because you're trying to move on and stuff like that. I'm also interested, if I may change the subject a little bit here, about the actual physical wordage and choice of words in this.
I think it's beautifully written. I think it's beautifully structured. I think
agree.
that it wades. That's, I think, what she's getting at is the fact that her thoughts and the way that she structures her words are waiting so that you have that physical image, you have that mental image in your head.
Can I tell you my favorite line here?
What's that?
Where a soccer ball tied to a rope hangs next to the one that no matter how hard we've punched is never let loose, a merciless pendulum. I think having the word pendulum be the first word in that line, it really puts a lot of, you talk about waiting, but isn't waiting, and a pendulum kind of does the same thing where it kind of goes, you know, back and forth in a way that's kind of, and you know, it's interesting that she uses I'll just say tetherball because I can't think of another word for it right now, but a tetherball court as like as an example, like you could have used anything that your dad didn't. That's like the most detailed thing, and then also like the fish is ready, and you know, just small things. It's the small things in life that I think really make this poem.
Yeah, it is interesting with the tetherball too, right? Because it gives you that indication of time.
Yeah, the cicada shells.
And at the same time, it gives you that feeling of being tethered, right? Like it can't be gotten rid of, right? Like no matter what you do, that ball is still attached.
Can I say I love this guy?
It's kind of both of those metaphors at the same time. Very effective.
I think that she was very careful with what choices she took.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was a sad poem because I'm not to discredit you guys, but like I'm a girl. I have a father that like he was in the hospital beginning of the year, so naturally this year it's crossed my mind a lot. You know, what happens when he's gone, and so like this actually made me very sad. So because it is, I know we'll eventually get to the talk, like what his final wishes are, but I would be in her situation where it's like, I can't take these and spread them because then I don't have my daddy anymore. See, I'm sad. But, so I don't know, I felt like, at least for me, it was very relatable in the mortality of the people that we have around us, and in a way, they're almost taken for granted because here she has this beautiful memory of something so simple that at the time she probably didn't think anything of it. Right. And now that he's gone, she's like, I wish I had stayed in that moment a little bit more.
Yeah, that's how I always feel when a relative of mine has passed away. Why? When again, going back to Grandpa, he lived in Florida at the time that he died, so I hadn't seen him for a while, and I really should have been I felt like I should have been calling him more often. You know, he loved the Eagles games, so like I would call him during that. And then like when I found out he passed away, I'm like, whoa! I was completely hurting myself. I was like, oh, why didn't I call him more? Like I should have called him. Why didn't I call? And everyone's like, don't worry about it. It's just, you know, he knows that you meant well. And right now I'm determined not to make the same mistake with my mom's dad, who is still alive, but not as communicative. All my other grandparents died in very sudden circumstances. This one's taking longer. But, you know, I do try to reach out to him as much as I can so I don't feel like I make that mistakes. Like you
And-
said, you make mistakes, you try to learn from them.
Yeah.
And even if, I don't really consider this a mistake even, I just consider it that,
You
you
want
do
to
care
do
about, so
more.
you want to do more. Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's how, and this is just, again, my own perspective on it, this is her way of trying to spend more time with her dad. Even though he's gone, it's like, this is what I have, and I'm going to spend that time, you know, I'm going to spend that time with him that I didn't appreciate before.
Yeah, you've probably seen those TV shows and movies where people will, like they'll imagine that they're still with their mother or father, and then it kind of like fades away. Yeah, this was basically what I felt when I was reading this. Like, oh, there's this man, he's alive, and he's you know, I know I'm a guy, but you know, there's this man, he's alive, and we used to go to the school and get cicada shells, and we used to play tetherball, and we used to, you know, eat fish all the time, and now it's kind of gone, and I miss it. But I think where the difference for me is that it seems like the author is afraid to move on, while it seems like you guys are saying that she wants to get it over with. So I think that's where the
it might even be like a mix of it, because again, I can't say anything because I was never in her situation, but I know if I ever were, I would probably be mixed, where it's like I want to keep him, but I also want to honor his wishes. So and that's probably how she's feeling too, where it's like, I want to honor his wishes, if only I could get these damn hands to get him off the shelf, and it's like, but she can't because she wants to keep him.
And that's of course the thing with Judaism, is those wishes don't usually come into play unless they're on the will. So like you don't have the, oh, I wish that my ashes go to space or something. I'm speaking. But like it's not like that. It's a little bit different. So I didn't really pick up on that. And I'm not to be offensive to anyone.
There's letting go doesn't mean going away, because you always do have them in your memories. You will. I think that's just the being able to break the two apart is what she's trying to.
You know, I don't know if Daniella is ever going to watch our discussion on this, but if she does, I just wanted to say there are poems and then there's special poems, and this is one of the ones that I found to be very special and very touching, and you know, it's up there, like I said, with Osip Mandelstam's poem, and just the way it's worded, it gives you the feels, and it gives you the heart, tugs at the heartstrings. It was absolutely wonderful, and I wanted to give Danielle a complete props to writing this poem.
The poem that this reminds me of is One Art by Elizabeth Bishop.
Oh, I remember that one too.
One Art, and that poem has to do with the art of losing things, and it starts out by simple objects like car keys, but then it turns into people, and
didn't we also do one called The Art of Losing? I think
we did the Art of Losing. That was a short story, but One Art is a poem.
Okay.
The comparison between the two is that, like Bishop did, Watson is able to capture that heartfelt, gritty, waiting, and miserable emotion. I
wouldn't use the word miserable.
I mean, more so, it's just that heartbreaking, heart-wrenching.
Yeah, that's better.
Very raw, and I think that it really did come from the heart, and I think it was both in its structure and its words and its meaning.
And I think, you know, it seems as though I know when I write poems where someone's died, but not in real life. Like I just write about death sometimes. I can tell that this feels like someone actually has died. This feels like this is something that's actually happening.
Like if she ever watches this, like my condolences, because this sounds like it hurts.
And Danielle, if you ever do watch this might be one of the best poems I've ever read. I'm not even beginning to exaggerate on that. And I've read a lot of poems, like especially here on Literary Gladiators. This is one of probably the top 3, at least.
Along with Black Sun.
Black Sun was good too.
Final thoughts?
Well, I just want to say I agree with Ari. I think it's really a powerful piece, really well crafted, and I would also say that it reminded me a lot of watching people close to me who have lost people very close to them. Like my mother lost her brother, And it was sad for all of us, but especially for my mom. Like, you see grief like that, and you worry for the person because you don't know if they're ever going to come out of it. Mm-hmm. And
I know what happened with Damon's mom. I don't really want to go into detail about it, but it's not good. So she lost her son.
Thank God my mom did. Yeah, and that's another one altogether.
Mm-hmm.
I had my cousin lost his son, and he never got over it. He's passed on now too. Mm. Grief is definitely a thing that weighs. I really feel like this captured the overwhelming sense of it. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel about it. So
should also mention it's not grief.
Discussion keeps getting me teary up, which I guess says a lot about a piece of work because it gets you thinking and feeling. So I'm sorry if I keep looking like I'm about to cry to people. I'm sorry.
It's just, I almost. I think it's poems like these that make that's the reason why people need to be paying attention to literary magazines and other outlets that are often overlooked. And
like all poetry.
Yeah, and I think I'm subscribed to Slice magazine. From what I've read thus far, I've been quite amazed, and I'm really looking forward to delving into this even more.
And they also just wanted to say that grief is a thing that weighs, but it weighs differently for different people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
As Larry was mentioning.
So it all depends on what they're grieving over and who the person is, too.
Mm-hmm. And we send our condolences here at Literary Gladiators to everyone and every person out there who is suffering from any kind of grief or displeasure at the moment.
And if you are interested in reading this issue and subscribing to Slice magazine, here is the copy of issue number 25, which was for the fall of 2019 and winter of 2020. This comes out once a year at this point. Be sure to join us next time on another episode of Literary Gladiators. For now,
keep reading. Keep reading.
Hi there, this is Josh, and on the next episode of Literary Gladiators, Larry, Jesi, Kayla, and I will be discussing Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. If you like what you see on this channel, please support us on Patreon. For the money that we make, we'll provide you, the viewer, with even more material. Thank you for tuning in, and be sure to join us next time for that discussion. Keep reading.